call with one another. Um, just to remind you of Oklahoma Center for Community and Justice, our mission is to inspire and equip Oklahomans to overcome bias, bigotry, and oppression. And that work under a large umbrella of inclusivity and DE&I seems to be something that's very challenging in some parts of our country. And OCCJ stands out as one that's been doing this work for so many years. As you all know, coming out of NCCJ and then transforming to OCCJ, Oklahoma Center for Community Justice, since 2002. We stand out in this work, and we plan to continue this with your support, with your collaboration and partnership with this community. And that sums to some of the things that we do, and even today. I'd like to thank especially Rahima and Veronica for being our panelists for today, and you all are in for a treat from these two talented and intellectually minded individuals. So with that, thank you for being here with us today, and I will turn it back over to Victoria.
Thank you so much, Phil. And just for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Victoria Dangton Devon-Askin. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And as Phil said, I'm the program coordinator here at OCCJ. Thank you again for joining us. Just briefly wanting to go over some logistics before I hand it over to Kara Golden, our director of programs. So please utilize the chat functions for any questions, any comments, any thoughts. We hope this to be a very interactive conversation, and we would love to hear your thoughts on it. So please utilize our chat function if you feel comfortable to. And just for the duration of the panel, we do ask during the discussion time between the panelists and some of the questions I have that we keep ourselves on mute. And then when we get to a Q&A period, which our lovely Director of Development, Morgan Allen White, will be leading, she will give instructions on how to come off mute and how to answer some questions. But for the duration of the panel, we ask that all participants just keep themselves on mute. As you probably already know, we are recording this panel, so just something to keep in mind. And you do not have to have your camera on for the panel. You can have it off, and we just want people to be able to feel comfortable. With that, thank you so much for your time, and I'll hand it over to Kara.
Excellent. Thank you. So she, her, hers, Kara Golden. I'm delighted to have you all here. We're going to be talking today about, the realities of rebuilding life as a refugee here in Oklahoma, highlighting our Anytown delegate, Rahima, who just wrapped up Anytown a couple of weeks ago, and then also Veronica from CAIR Oklahoma, recognizing that CAIR Oklahoma, along with Catholic Charities, YWCA, Congregation B'nai Muna, and a number of other organizations here in Tulsa and Oklahoma City have done an enormous job really helping these folks feel like Oklahoma is their home and readjust and settle in that way. So thank you both for being here. I'll start off with the bios with Rahima. She is a junior currently at Booker T. Washington, and as I mentioned, one of our Anytown delegates from this year. Even though her name is Rahima, her teachers at her old high school named her Polymath. Polymath is a Greek word, and it means a person of great and varied learning. It is also an appropriate nickname because she loves learning and exploring. Rahima also does research about various topics from sciences to philosophies and from world religions to art. In her free time, she usually likes to read books, write stories, poems, and do Sudoku puzzles. Rahima will be a junior this year, as I mentioned, at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa. She came here as an Afghan refugee and has settled into her new home. Rahima feels fortunate to have friends who have created a community around her and her family. She said, being with people and hearing their life stories, challenges, advice, and experiences brings me the most joy. One of her favorite hobbies is cooking and serving food to family and guests. So thank you again for being with us, Rahima. Veronica Lesure has served as the CAIR Oklahoma Civil Rights Director since 2014, helping clients who have been victims of religious discrimination or harassment and providing statewide advocacy resources to help promote civil liberties in Oklahoma. She graduated magna cum laude from Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, with a degree in interdisciplinary studies. After earning a Juris Doctorate from the University of Oklahoma College of Law, and being admitted to practice in Oklahoma, Veronica joined CAIR as a staff attorney and then expanded her role to civil rights director. Her commentary on the state of civil rights in Oklahoma has been published in dozens of media outlets at the local, state, and national levels, and she is a frequent speaker at various panels, workshops, including ILI, and symposia in the social justice and nonprofit fields. Outside of her work at CAIR, Veronica serves as the vice president of the ACLU of Oklahoma Board of Directors and the executive director of the National Lawyers Guild Oklahoma chapter. So thank you both again so much for being here. And with that, I will turn it back over to Victoria to get us off with some questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kara. And with that, I'll be starting out with our first question, who will be directed to Rahima. Just wanting to give you the space and the opportunity to share part of your story with us, what your experience has been as a refugee, leaving Afghanistan, settling in Oklahoma, and in Tulsa specifically. And again, as much or as little as you're comfortable with sharing with us.
Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well and smiling. Well, I can remember very well first time like Taliban invaded Kabul, the place that I used to live in Afghanistan. First of all, I never thought Taliban can come so close to our home country, or they can invade us and take control of everything. We heard in the news negotiations with Taliban are going so well, peace negotiations, and everything is going to be settled down. But all of a sudden, when Taliban came to Kabul, I was like so frustrated. I remembered that I cried. I was calling my dad, but because my dad was out of the house, I was worried what is going to happen to him. It was unimaginable as Taliban came. I went to an underground school, like secret school, when I was at my home country. It was supported by American teachers. As soon as like Taliban came to my home country, my teachers reached out to me, telling me to just go to the airport, make your with your brother and your dad. As soon as I got into the airport, I saw so many people were just trying to flee the country, to escape. I just lost hope, and I just like, oh my goodness, what happened to my home country? What happened to Afghanistan? We never thought about this is going to happen. As I went to the airport, I saw so many people were crushed. So many people lost their lives, especially little kids. And I saw my mothers handing their babies over razor wires, Afghan fellows, my own Afghan fellows, falling from the landing gears of airplane. So first attempt to the airport, I couldn't make it because my teachers wanted me to reach my documents to American soldiers or Marines to get me, like, to be connected with them. It was so hard because Taliban were there. We had gates, we had checkpoints, so we couldn't make it. I attempted airport like several times, 11 times. Our last time that we made it, when I made it, when I being connected with American soldiers, I just shouted, I'm like, yes, we made it. And I'm so grateful that I'm here in the United States and my families are with me. It was just a miracle. It was so hard to get out. It was so hard to be connected with American soldiers, but finally we made it, and I'm here in the United States. So we had some process going on. We stayed like several days in Kuwait, and then as I came to the United States, my COVID was positive, so I was quarantined for 2 months in Washington, D.C. But I had so much fun. I get the chance to be connected with so many people, different organizations, nonprofit organizations, that they were reaching out to me. Tell your stories. How did you get out? And writing my stories. And also, like, as I got out and when I was in my hotel, I was feeling safe, but at the same time, I had fear, like, what is going to happen to the rest of my family, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins? What about all the females, all the girls? Like, we are going to just go back to the old history, Black history, that, well, women were not allowed to go to, and still till today, like, they're not allowed to go to school, universities, or to have jobs. And it's just, the history is just being repeated itself. So while I was in the hotel, I was crying, and I was like so sad all of a sudden why this happened. And it was really unimaginable, and we did not know it's going to come. So after our process, our documents and everything, it took us a while, and I just I received a message that I'm going to come to Tulsa and Oklahoma. So I was like thinking, I started researching and I started reaching out to people, which school I should go, what should I try, and everything. So people were so nice here. They just opened their arms towards us and welcomed us coming here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They provided us food, shelter, so many resources, great resources. And again, I'm so grateful, and I will always be grateful to be here. And I'm saying America is a land full of great opportunities. I can learn, explore, and try something. Every day I'm trying something new, which is great.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us and being brave, and your story is very inspiring. And I'm happy that we get to learn and listen from that. Veronica, you work with CAIR Oklahoma, and you have worked with them for a very long time. You have a lot of expertise, and you've been working with the Oklahoma City community for some time. Just want to hear a little bit about your perspective of the work that's going on with resettlement in Oklahoma City.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. And Rahima, thank you so much for sharing your story. It is a great reminder for people like me who've been involved in the resettlement of our Afghan friends of why we're doing this work. I've been so privileged to be working on the other end of kind of refugee community building. When we first realized that Oklahoma was going to be receiving so many of our new Afghan neighbors, we really took this as an honor for us to be part of welcoming a new group of Oklahomans into our community. So what CAIR Oklahoma did, we kind of entered our first phase of refugee services by welcoming each new family with a fresh meal from a local Muslim-owned restaurant, a halal meal that they could enjoy after maybe having a long day of traveling, especially with young children, and also with a welcome basket that had blankets for the cold hotel rooms. It had clothing, hygiene items, as well as a copy of the Quran and a prayer rug for each member of the family, so that folks knew as soon as they arrived here that their religious rights as Muslims would be respected and honored throughout the process of resettling them. We opened a refugee resource center here in Oklahoma City that provided clothing, not only Western clothing, but also culturally familiar Desi clothing for our families, so that especially during the holidays around Ramadan and the Eid holidays, they would have access to clothing that made them feel ready to celebrate those holidays in a really special way. And although our Refugee Resource Center closed after a year of operation, it was such a hub for our families from Afghanistan to come and meet with each other, learn new things, share information, that we launched our next phase, our third phase of refugee services, which is community building and building social emotional wellness amongst this new community. So we're doing things like having a women's day out at a local park. We're going to do a nature hike and some sports and games and arts and crafts and a picnic, just so that these young women feel that they're welcome and comfortable everywhere in our city, not only in schools and their homes, but also in the parks that are here for every single resident to enjoy. We're going to be working more on our youth mentorship program, incorporating young women like Rahima and her counterparts into the Young Professionals Network, so that we can learn from these folks about how to make programming more accessible to young Muslims and how to make young Muslims feel confident in their careers, in their education, and in their lives as new Oklahomans. And then the last thing I'll touch on is yesterday I was very privileged to be part of an interim study at the State Senate examining the Afghan Placement and Assistance Program. Not only did we look at the work that refugee resettlement agencies have done here in Oklahoma over the past 2 years, we looked at the amount of money that flowed through the resettlement agencies to make sure these folks had housing and food, and getting them into long-term apartment complexes and rental homes, getting them really kind of on their feet and established. But we also looked at some potential areas where statewide policy could make future resettlement efforts more successful and more smooth. We knew that housing is a huge problem for folks in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and across the state. So we suggested to the Senate committee that affordable housing that is safe and allows people to live with dignity would be a great policy for the state to pursue. We talked about the possibility of a statewide portal or resource bank for newcomers to Oklahoma, so that not only our new Afghan friends, but any newcomer to the Oklahoma family would have access to information on how to reach a doctor, how to get on a bus to go to an appointment, what it means when you get a new job or are fired from a job, and what your rights are as an employee or as a renter, what to do if you you are stopped by police and what your rights are in an encounter of that nature. So we talked about a couple of different policy avenues that we've been very, very privileged to share with our state leadership. I will say from my perspective here in Oklahoma City that it has been an absolute honor and privilege to get to know folks like Rahima and the families. I'm so lucky to be living down the street from a family from Afghanistan. I see their kids playing out in the yard. For a while, it seemed like their only kind of like toy was a broken office chair that they would ride down their driveway. And I would see them out every night riding up and down the driveway on this rolling chair. And then just recently they were gifted with some bicycles. And so now I see them riding their bike all around the neighborhood, saying hello to everybody. They always have something kind to say to me and my partner and my dog. They've brought us food. It has just been an incredible privilege to be part of this story and to be part of these people's lives. So I'm honored to have been part of it. We know that not all of it has been smooth sailing. We know there are still many challenges that our friends are facing, but it's really a great experience to have been part of the effort to help them solve those problems and build this beautiful Afghan Oklahoma community.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do and for the service that you have to not just Oklahoma, but to our new community members. Speaking of challenges, wanting to pose a question to both of our panelists, any challenges, if any, that you've seen in the work you do, or Rahima, in your experience, whether in Tulsa or Oklahoma City during the resettlement effort?
Well, to be honest, I did not encounter any challenges. It was a great experience coming here into the United States. They provided with so many opportunities. And personally, meeting new people in my life, it had a huge impact on my life. I get the chance to learn and explore, for instance, my own mentors, and everyone is just reaching out to me, like, try this one, go to this camp, and it's a great experience. I'm just like learning and exploring as much as I can. And also, not just me, my family, my dad get the chance to work like in his own career. They had so many resources, like taking ESL classes. And my dad wasn't really good at speaking English, so he get the chance to go learn English. And right now he is having his own job. And my brother is also going to the same school with me. And we are just like so happy being here. And I did not encounter any challenges, as I said, and it's great.
Well, Rahima, I'm so glad to hear that. That makes me so happy that you are having a great experience here. I will say from our perspective here in Oklahoma City that there are some challenges that some families are having a hard time navigating. Probably one of the primary challenges that we've seen throughout this process has been that of housing. Because many of our families are still working on one income per family. Many families are large. The average family size in the Oklahoma City community is about 7. One income for 7 to 12 family members is just simply not enough for quality housing. And so we had many families that were residing in apartments that were just honestly not safe for human habitation. Countless stories of pests in the apartments, of sewage backing up, of doors that didn't lock, screens that were broken out and never replaced. We had a number of families have their central air conditioning going out in the middle of last summer. And so we had apartments that we clocked at 95 degrees on the inside with families with babies having to live in those conditions. And unfortunately, Oklahoma's landlord-tenant law is not always supportive of renters and tenants. And so it was very, very challenging to try and get landlords and property owners to take these problems seriously. I'll touch on a challenge that I want to ask our listeners to take up, which is that of our friends' immigration status. So our Afghan friends mostly are here as under humanitarian parole. While they meet the dictionary definition of a refugee, they did not come here, many of them, with the legal status of refugee and all of the security and the benefits that a refugee legal status confers. Parole is a limited status that requires adjustment at the end of a 2-year period. There are a couple of mechanisms available to families, typically that of asylum or a special immigrant visa, but the pipelines for those processes are incredibly backed up. Prior to the Afghan Placement and Assistance Program following the fall of Kabul in 2021, there were 400,000 asylum applications in the pipeline and over 120,000 SIV applications. And that's simply to have an application seen by a person, not to have it adjudicated or decided upon. And so the process of getting asylum or the process of getting an SIV is expensive, it's time consuming, and it's actually very uncertain for our families. And so if they are not able to adjust that status, that places them at the risk of deportation. So one solution to this very thorny issue is an Afghan Adjustment Act. This is an act that's been proposed in Congress, that is live in Congress. It's bipartisan, bicameral, and we're getting growing amounts of support for an Afghan Adjustment Act. This would provide a smoother pathway to permanent residency for our Afghan families, giving them the security that they need to continue reestablishing their life here without having to continually worry about reapplying for parole, reapplying for EADs, employment authorization documents, or the uncertainty of the asylum application. So I actually am going
to Veronica, you're muted, sorry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Where did you catch any of what we just, where did I get cut off?
We talked about EADs, employment authorization cards, and then you got cut off. Sorry.
Okay. Cool. So you didn't miss much. So I'm actually going to place in the chat a link to our Afghan advocacy page. And this is information about the Afghan Adjustment Act and how our people listening, our participants, can advocate for this Afghan Adjustment Act. Our folks in DC are telling us they're pretty confident about its passage, or at least its safety in the House. We are a little concerned about passage in the Senate. So we've included links to both our senators from Oklahoma so that you can contact them and tell them why we need them to sign this bill and why we need them to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act. Because without this kind of security, we will have many, many Afghan families who are at risk of losing their jobs, losing their legal status, losing their housing, losing their ability to go to school, and just overall losing the ability to continue rebuilding as our neighbors. And so I really want to impress upon our participants that this Afghan Adjustment Act would solve so many problems and would just be such a great thing, not only for our Afghan friends, but for everyone who's been privileged to walk alongside them through this journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that and also giving a legal and political perspective on what's happening on the ground. And thank you again, Rahima, for sharing your experience, which is very valuable, depending on the different landscapes of different cities, different experiences, and understanding that everyone does have a different experience going through different processes. I know, Rahima, you had a lot of amazing things to say about the process of how helpful the process was transitioning here in Tulsa. Do you want to expand a bit more on that? And then Veronica, any of the success stories and successes you have seen within the Oklahoma system as well?
So as soon as I got in Tulsa, we settled in a hotel for 2 months because of our process and the housing, where we will stay and which school do we go to. So I just Googled in the internet, what is the best school in Tulsa? So the first name just came out, Booker T. Washington. So I just decided I want to go to Booker T. So first I went to Hale because of my placement test, and I want to get some credits for my freshman year. And then I was keep texting some of the people working in TPS when I will be able to go to Booker T. Please let me know. Please. They were just saying, it is going to be a surprise. Do not worry. Just calm down. So as soon as I got the message that I can go to Booker T, it was I was so happy. I was jumping all around. I was telling my brother and my dad, oh, we are going to go to Booker T. And yes, it was a great experience. And also coming to Tulsa, I have the right to practice my own religion and go to mosque and be having my own community. Also, it's also awesome, being around with the people that I know. I met some other people from Afghanistan that I didn't know them. So that was a good experience for me. And right now going to school, exploring, and going to Anytown program, that was amazing as well. Trying different and good opportunities that it's just coming. And I'm so grateful I get the chance to publish my stories and doing more public speakings, and it really helps because I want to represent my own people, that they are in Afghanistan, that they are suffering and they're going so many challenges, and I can present them, and hopefully when they present them, like to tell them their challenges and what they are going through, so we can help them. And yeah, I'm so grateful that we are being united here and working towards and making our lives better.
I have seen the absolute best of Oklahoma since this resettlement project began. When it became clear to us that we would be accepting 1,800 of our Afghan friends, I was getting dozens of emails per day and phone calls. And all of them were saying, you know, I'm a doctor, I want to volunteer. I'm a teacher, I would love to bring resources to the students. I have furniture, I have clothing. I want to help. How can I help? And as someone who's worked for a Muslim civil rights advocacy organization for coming up on 9 years now, it's astonishing to me. It was such an incredible experience to see Oklahoma rally around this mission, that we are so happy to have this new community joining us. How do we make this the best experience for them? We also have experience that we know the statewide social services net is not always sufficient to catch people when they're struggling or when they're vulnerable. And so the charitable sector absolutely picked up for whatever we could do for these families. It was people moving them into and out of apartments. It was people who, we had a network of about 50 volunteers who were just driving things from place to place, whether it was donations of food through a food pantry or boxes of snacks from another donor who wanted to make sure that while people were in short-term housing, the kids had something to snack on, right? It was people who volunteered to drive to appointments and sit with folks as they navigated the healthcare system, which, I mean, I'll be honest, the healthcare system is nigh impossible to navigate. And I've lived here my whole life, and I have no idea what most people are talking about. And so someone who does not, whose English is not their first language, they're a newcomer to our system, they're a newcomer to our culture, I can't imagine how they would be expected to navigate getting care for their medical needs. We have had folks just absolutely go above and beyond in support of these families. And we were so privileged yesterday during the interim study to hear from some of them. It was a cross-community, an incredibly religiously diverse group of folks. We had people from the Muslim community who came together, Jewish, every spectrum of Christianity was represented as part of this mission. And I think that, you know, it often feels like Oklahomans can't agree on anything. But the one thing that Oklahoma did agree on was that this is the right thing to do, that our Afghan friends are welcome here. People who are struggling and marginalized and need our help are welcome here. And what we can do for them is build an Oklahoma that is safe, secure, welcoming, and healthy for all of its people, for people who have lived here for many, many generations, and people who are brand new to this community. It has been an incredible, incredible privilege to see Oklahoma do this. And I'm even more excited about what this is revealing that we can continue to do moving forward for newcomers, for every Oklahoman who needs our help.
Thank you both for your perspectives. Definitely very important to have. Speaking about what we can do in the future, what are ways that you both see that, whether it's the community in Tulsa, Oklahoma City, or just Oklahoma as a whole, what are the ways that we can better support the Afghan community?
Well, so everyone supported me, like every single soul that came into my life. Just so thankful that they came into my life. I'm so happy to have them. Yes, like we had so many people like from different religions, different backgrounds came helping us, and they provided us with so many resources, like taking ESL classes, going to school, provided us with shelter, housing, food. And I was also thinking like so many other Afghans right now in my home countries are challenging with poverty and extremist rule and lack of representation and no freedom at all. So I'm so privileged. And I was also thinking that right now I have so many resources and I can make myself better, and I can help one day other people like around the world and that they are challenging. They provided us with so many great resources, and yeah.
I have loved seeing Oklahomans kind of do this work together. I think as far as continuing this support, getting an Afghan Adjustment Act passed, lobbying and advocating on behalf of the policies that will help our community, not only our Afghan friends, but all Oklahomans, is absolutely our next step, right? Solving some of these problems with affordable housing, right? Many of the family sponsors that were helping our Afghan families navigate the housing challenges, they have never had to live in low-income housing, right? They had not had to live in low-income apartment complexes. Or if they had, it had been many, many years since they'd had that experience. And they were overwhelmed at how terrible some of these living conditions were. And they would come to us and come to our government affairs department and say, you know, this isn't right. You know, people shouldn't live like this. People shouldn't have to live with cockroaches coming into their children's beds in the middle of the night. People shouldn't have to live with sewage that is an open pit of raw sewage in their apartment complex. No one should have to live like that. Least of all our Afghan community, but nobody should have to do that. And I said, I'm so glad that you agree that this is substandard housing. I'm so glad that you agree that the issue of affordable housing is important. So here are the bills that we are supporting this legislative session. Here are the lawmakers who are really, really interested in hearing what you have to say. Here are the policies that we're supporting. Please help us in this process of advocating for better housing policy for everybody. And we've had people absolutely pick that up and run with it. So every time, the experiences, I think, of our Afghan friends have revealed to us that some of these systems are not working to serve every Oklahoman. The benefits of things like food stamps. These are sponsor families who have not had to get food stamps before. And so they're seeing this amount per month that a family is receiving in terms of supplemental nutrition assistance benefits. And they're saying that's not enough. When a family is welcoming a new baby and the income is just simply not there for what a baby needs, people have been outraged. Like, why is there not better support for new mothers here in this state? Why is this such a dangerous and scary place to be a brand new mother? And so we're able to say, I'm so glad that you're seeing this problem. Yes, let's work on this. Let's talk policy. Let's sit down with lawmakers and share these experiences. Let's look at what SNAP benefits actually mean to a family. And here's how we can advocate for more dignity for every struggling Oklahoman. And so I just want folks to kind of keep in mind, a rising tide, lifts all ships. What we do to help the Afghan community is helping every other new Oklahoman, every other struggling and vulnerable Oklahoman. And that helps all of us, even if we're not struggling in the moment, right? Because many of us are only a few missed paychecks away from being in that same boat with them. And so keeping in mind that when our whole state is healthy and safe, we are all better for that. It's really easy, I think, to get siloed when it comes to policy. But thinking holistically about the welfare of a state means looking kind of at a micro level at one particular community, but also being able to zoom out and look at the entire statewide community. And so I've been thinking a lot about that as we're moving into kind of the dormant legislative season and getting ready for legislative session to start up in January. What have people learned through this experience that will help us advocate for better policy for everyone? And I think that's a really powerful level of momentum that we can bring to bear. And the last thing that I'll say on this point too is, many of our resettlement partners are saying, have said before, this was a history-making effort. We will likely not see something like that again. And I want to caution us against that thinking. The fact is that where we are globally, we will likely see more displaced people. There are over 2 million people displaced from their homes at this moment in time. We will very likely see more of them, whether that's people who are driven from their homes because of conflict or war, or because of natural disasters, or simply because of the impact of climate change. droughts and floods and extreme weather that people are not prepared to survive. And so when we are better prepared to welcome these folks, our state becomes better. And we should not become complacent and think that this will not happen again, because I think as we move further into the 21st century, it is entirely possible that Oklahoma, as well as other countries, will need to be prepared to welcome more and more displaced people if we do not make some major changes to our global policy.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in that global policy piece, Veronica. Definitely thinking about the fact that America is made of immigrants, that we all migrated. Well, most of us migrated here from different countries, and just wanting to point to the past in that way and say, well, what are we doing about future migrants that do come to the United States? Thank you for pointing that out. Speaking of resources, both of you touched on that, wanting to know what are some resources that are currently accessible to our Afghan refugee friends here. Just thinking through the fact that some people, including myself on this call, might not know all that's out there, and knowing that, you know, some people even within the Afghan refugee community don't even know all the resources out there. So just wanting to create space for us to mention, Rahima, resources that you've experienced and your family's utilized here in Tulsa, and Veronica, resources in Oklahoma City that our Afghan families can access.
So I'm not officially American yet. The process of like adopting here, it's quite slow and tedious, but it allows me the freedom to create goals and my own dreams. As I mentioned, like they provided us with so many resources. Like school is the great thing, and I'm still also looking forward to continue my college and university here. Jobs, the opportunities are was available to my dad, so thankful for that. And yes, being like some of my friends, for instance, they can't speak very well English, so I just feel that they don't have like the opportunities that I can explore. They don't get the chance as much as they can because they have this language barrier, and they are working towards it, but I'm also quite like upset about it. Well, they cannot try the things that I can try because they can't speak English. You have to be able to have ability of communications and speak the language. So, and our process are still pending, like our asylum cases and getting green card. And I'm hoping to reach to that point so I can continue my university, hopefully in the future. And also making, like, as I said, hopefully I'm looking also to have peace one day in my home country and help my own fellows that are still there and struggling with so many challenges: poverty, malnutrition, lack of educations, and so many other problems.
So I can really only speak to what I know of Oklahoma City, although I have recently been able to connect with some folks in Tulsa and learn from some of their models. So I know that in Oklahoma City, we have a really phenomenal organization called the Spero Project. That's SPERO. And since 2009, they have been walking alongside refugee communities across the city to help link them up to resources and families and the assistance that they need to really feel like they are at home in Oklahoma City. Right now, the Spero Project has language classes. They have an employment specialist who helps folks finding jobs. They have a school liaison that is helping families navigate the school system. And they have youth mentoring classes for boys and girls of all ages to try and connect with each other. And many of these classes are actually led by folks who've been refugees themselves through previous Spero Project programming. And so it's being led by someone who has the experience of being displaced from their homeland, which I think is a really incredible model that is not replicated everywhere. In Oklahoma City, we also have the Afghan Legal Network, which is a group of pro bono attorneys and legal workers who are helping to process for free the asylum applications and a small number of green card applications, although they're hoping to build capacity and take on more and more of that work as they grow. Here in Tulsa, I had heard that there was some cooperation between the YWCA and the TU Law Clinic to process a lot of the immigration needs, which again is not a model that it was actually very common in other states. And so when I've talked to folks from the refugee resettlement community in other places in the United States, people have been really, really surprised to hear how we have helped people meet the legal and immigration related needs of this new community. As far as what we do at CAIR Oklahoma, our sort of niche is understanding that our Afghan friends are majority Muslim, and they will therefore have some special kind of needs and cultural dynamics that service providers who are not Muslim might need to know. So we did countless Muslim sensitivity trainings to healthcare providers, teachers, administrators, even to employers, to help them know how to serve their Afghan and Muslim clients and families and patients with the best level of sensitivity. We have been able to provide some religious education, and particularly around the Eid holidays, a time for families to get together and celebrate this really important time of the year kind of with their own Muslim community, and feeling really safe and supported there. And we also provided some culturally appropriated clothing that was all completely donated by the Muslim community so that folks could, look their best on this really important day. Really what we are doing kind of moving forward is just meeting needs as we hear about them, right? So as our Afghan friends open up to us and they come to us and say, hey, lots of us are very concerned about this particular issue or about this particular challenge, we are working to develop programming that meets those challenges. So, for example, many of them were bringing up that they had dental issues and were having trouble accessing dental care because the translation barrier or the language barrier was pretty significant, and many of them were not sure what their insurance could or would cover as far as pretty intensive dental work needs. So we connected with a nonprofit dental clinic here in Oklahoma City who were able to sort of triage the situation and find out who had the highest needs for this particular type of care and offer it at a reduced price to meet the needs of the community where they were, so that they were paying some money because we just simply were not able to kind of get to a zero cost dental procedure, but it was something that was within the reach of families at the income that they're having. So we're just learning how to meet needs as they arise. A lot of our focus, just because of the nature of the CAIR Oklahoma team, has been the women and the young women, helping to empower them in their educational and career journeys. But we're also working on developing programming for young men so that they understand kind of what the implications are of this new community that is not wholly Afghan, but also not fully Oklahoman. It's something that's a really beautiful mix of the two. And so I feel super, super privileged to be in this particular phase of refugee resettlement. It's a learning and developing and growing phase with the community, not necessarily for the community. And so I'm just very, very excited and very, very honored and privileged to be part of this journey for Oklahoma.
Thank you both for the theme of the words, I feel, is doing things together, not doing things for, and definitely appreciating that attitude and approach when we do deal with different communities that we welcome into Oklahoma. So thank you for emphasizing that. Wanting to mention as well that links and resources are being dropped in the chat, just so that everyone can take note of that. I will also be adding that to the follow-up email, so that everyone that is part of this session, as well as everyone that has signed up for it, will receive those resources to be able to share and communicate. Just wanting to acknowledge the wealth of wisdom that we have even within our participants as well. And with that, we will be going into a time of Q&A with Morgan Allen White. But before I hand over the floor to Morgan, just wanting to drop a survey link. This is something new that we have started implementing with our panels. We appreciate all feedback and welcome all feedback from everyone. So if you could please take the time to fill that out as we go through our Q&A section. Any feedback's helpful, and we just wanted to create space to hear your voices and your opinions in our panels as well. So thank you so much. And Morgan, you have the floor.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan Allen White. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I proudly serve as the Director of Development here at OCCJ. Once again, I really want to thank Veronica for being here today representing CAIR. We love having you on our panels. We love having you present our curriculum. And Rahima, thank you for sharing your story, your personal experience. We loved having Rahima at Anytown. I'm sure in this short time we've spent together, you've seen the absolute brilliance that is Rahima. Multiply that over 7 days and your mind will be blown. An incredible, incredible person. So we have some questions in our Q&A. If you have any questions posing to the general you, please drop those in the chat. All right, I'm starting with a question from Karen, who is with CAP Tulsa. We are serving 25 Afghan families in our home visiting program. Challenges we've seen are around housing, affordability and landlord issues, accessing medical care, transportation, and sufficient income for daily needs. Given their precarious legal status, how are ongoing needs being addressed once federal assistance ended? Veronica, this seems like a question that might be more posed towards you.
Sure. The short answer to that question is the charitable sector. When this program all kind of started and Governor Kevin Stitt announced his intention to be part of this resettlement effort at the number that he listed, the 1,800, there were many concerns about whether or not the resettlement agencies were prepared and had the infrastructure to take on a project of this magnitude. And his response at that time was the charitable sector, nonprofits will do it. And so honestly, I mean, that's what we have done because we simply did not have any other option, right? And so yes, federal assistance is ending. We were not even sure when our first wave of families arrived to Oklahoma City, if they would qualify for any of the federal benefits that are available to refugees, things like cash assistance, or state level benefits like SNAP or TANF or this assistance for women and infants. That was solved within a couple of months of the arrival of the first family, but there was a very precarious time period where we were just simply not sure what, if any, social welfare was going to be available to our families. So when that federal assistance ends, the goal from the perspective of resettlement agencies is for families to be self-sufficient and to be kind of able to walk on their own through this journey. Typical refugee resettlement, that is refugee resettlement through sort of the traditional process, not the process by which our Afghan parolees came to Oklahoma. Typical refugee resettlement is a 90-day time period where at the end of the 90-day time period, the goal is for that family to have obtained long-term housing, have obtained income sufficient to meet those needs, to have children enrolled in school or plans to enroll children in school, and for them to be able to kind of let go of the resettlement agency and walk independently through the rest of their time here. Obviously, for our Afghan friends who came here under these uniquely precarious circumstances, that was just simply not that was not going to be realistic. So it's been the charitable sector that has picked up where many of these families needed help, and many of them are anticipating that they will continue to do so until these families reach a state of full self-sufficiency. Part of the goal of our interim study yesterday was to examine some state structures where better state policy could make this path a little bit easier, could make that journey into self-sufficiency a little bit less full of hardship than it currently is. But yeah, that was the long answer. The short answer is kind of the charitable sector / we don't really know. We don't fully know.
Thank you, Veronica. I'm going to pose a question for Rahima here. Mary asks, what is the biggest challenge for Afghan girls your age during resettlement? What was your experience? Maybe your biggest challenge?
Well, at first it was quite hard for me, like making friends. I was like not being able to express myself. But now I'm so grateful. Like I'm going and meeting so many new people from different backgrounds and different, like OCCJ was a great experience meeting people from different backgrounds and give me a new perspective that I can be friends with anyone who I want. And there shouldn't be, like, we shouldn't judge people based on their color of their skins or where they came from or what is their limits of their friends and family. So yes, and for most of the girls that they are challenging, I think it's English. They cannot speak very well English, so they don't get the chance to explore as much as I do. And I get like not having too much, they don't like expose themselves to so many opportunities or trying something new because they can't speak English. When I'm talking with my friends, they are trying, and there are so many resources that that has been provided to them, but it's still a challenge for them. And for me, I'm just like, I love being here in the US, America is great. Like being able to express myself and having my freedom, which is so difficult in my home country. And yeah, America's land of great opportunities and exploration and learning.
And one last question, again, maybe more geared towards Veronica, but the Cuban Adjustment Act and the Indochina Migration and Refugee Act are parts of our history that eased refugee status towards permanent residency. So why aren't some of these historical acts or even appropriations being utilized for our Afghan friends? They also qualified this by saying, I know nothing is easy in DC though.
That is a complicated question, particularly because I work for, and this is hosted by a 501c3 nonprofit who does not endorse or oppose political candidates, no matter how annoying they might be. So the complicated answer to a somewhat complicated question is there's deadlock in Congress. And unfortunately, people are willing to play political football with the lives of our Afghan friends. There's really no other way to put it. There have been sort of concerns about security, about background checks, all of which have been proven to be not real concerns by the fact that refugees and our Afghan parolees who came here undergo very strict security screening and vetting, some of the most strict security screening and vetting of any other class of immigrants to the United States, in fact. Also, the fact that many of these Afghan families worked directly with the United States military during the U.S. 20-year presence in Afghanistan, at great risk to themselves and to their families, I might add. So the complicated, issue of why we cannot get Congress to necessarily move on this is just, that's kind of how Congress is right now. We have people who are willing to hold this up in order to get other priorities sorted out, which is really unfortunate. And there's just simply this kind of deadlock, this sense that one side is not willing to budge, the other side is not willing to push. And the fact that some of these other adjustment acts are too long ago, at a time when there was a level of sort of the rules of politics and political engagement that don't really apply to what's going on in Congress right now. And I hope I said that in a safe enough way. I will say, however, that we've had some really great conversations with leadership in DC. It is in particular the stories that our sponsors and our veteran community have told that are changing people's minds. We had this a really, really fruitful meeting with one of Senator Lankford's staffers who listened for over an hour as people were sharing personal experiences about what this resettlement has meant to them. We're so privileged to have a veteran of Afghan conflict at our interim study yesterday, sharing her experience working shoulder by shoulder with Afghan women during her deployment, who were trying to bring democracy and human rights to these outlying provinces. And that testimony, that human impact, is so powerful. We can tell numbers to our lawmakers all day long, and they will not remember them once the meeting is over. But these human stories are really become the most powerful tool in our toolbox for this kind of advocacy. And so for those of you on the call who have had the absolute privilege of working with folks like Rahima and can share how much this has changed your life, I strongly, strongly encourage you to do that, because that might be what tips the scales. It might be what gets senators to sign this bill and to do the right thing for the Oklahoma community. So yes, DC is what it is, but the human connection that has come out of the past 2 years of Oklahoma history is historic. It's unprecedented. This is momentous work that we've done here. It's not over by any means, but the more we share that story, the more we share these experiences, the better we all are for that learning.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We at OCCJ, one of our main philosophies is we believe in social contact theory, that bias and discrimination can be absolutely shattered if you get to know somebody, you really get to know them. We can't uphold these stereotypes. It's something we talk about all the time. It's the basis of our programming. It's bringing those people together, and just having them be in dialogue with one another. What a beautiful note to end on. I want to remind everybody that the survey link is in the chat. So please fill out the survey. So we are a group that we love continuous improvement. We really value feedback. So please share your feedback with us. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Victoria.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Just wanting to get final thoughts from our panelists. What would you want the audience to take away from this discussion? Just briefly giving what you want them to take away.
So I want to mention this: hardship is not a choice. Criticizing, complaining, and not working towards making ourselves better or our community is a choice. So I'm so happy to be here in the United States, and thanks for every single person that helped me and helped me to be settled. And yes, that's it. And let's be united together and work towards things and make our lives better every day.
Thank you. I just am so glad that I got to be on this panel with you, Rahima. I don't know if you saw in the chat, but the CAIR Oklahoma team will actually be in Tulsa on Friday. We're making a visit to the Islamic Society of Tulsa. And so I would super love to meet you if you're planning to visit the mosque Friday afternoon for prayers, because we will be there with a table. But I think though, what I want our attendees and our guests to take away from this conversation is that history is what we make it. When we first learned that 1,800 Afghans were coming to Oklahoma, there were so many people who just thought it was not going to happen, right? Who just in disbelief that Oklahoma could become home for this new community. They thought that the Islamophobia was too great, that Oklahoma was an unsafe place for these families to settle, that Oklahomans would never agree that this was the right thing to do. And I'm so happy to say that 2 years later, we've proved all of those people wrong. Oklahoma absolutely is a home for these families. And I hope that they all understand how deeply the Oklahoma community has benefited from having them here. We are all better for this experience, but it did not come without work. It did not come just by hoping that things would get better. Every step of progress that we have made in any avenue in Oklahoma has come with hard work. Every ounce of movement that we make in the right direction comes with a tremendous amount of effort. But to paraphrase something that I learned from my Jewish friends, you are not required to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. We are not going to solve overnight every single problem. The problems of poverty, the problems of displacement, the problems of fear and bias and bigotry. We may not solve those problems even in our lifetimes, but we are not free to abandon that work. The only thing worse than continuing would be to stop. And so everybody on this call has some sphere of influence. Everyone has some superpower that they can make these changes in their own lives and the people around them. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, no matter who we are or what we look like or what our experiences are, to be a part of this history and a part of this movement and a part of this change. That is the only way that we will build the Oklahoma we all deserve, is if we are all willing to take those steps together and pull together into that future.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you for those amazing words. And thank you all for covering such a complicated topic in such a short amount of time with such amount of nuance. I'm incredibly impressed with how many perspectives we're able to hear and how many different parts of this bigger conversation we're able to touch. Just doing some final housekeeping, we're dropping in the chat the link to the Inclusive Leadership Institute for professional development, people in that sphere, and then as well for our Youth Leadership Forum for Community Transformation, a program here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, talking about race relations, our Greenwood Rising, the history of Black Wall Street. So please, if you know any youth that age, encourage them to sign up. And also we're sharing a link to our newsletter if you want to stay in contact with us about future panels, about what's happening at OCCJ, about different programs we're running. Please sign up for those panels. And once again, thank you all for your time and for your presence and being part of this conversation. And I hope you have a good rest of your week. Bye.